Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Ramble podcast. I am your host, Zach Stevens, and we are here to review the episode of Raw from July 17th, 2017, out of Nashville, Tennessee, in the Bridgestone Arena. As always, guys, you can follow us on Twitter at Ramble_cast. Again, that is Ramble_cast. We are also on Podbean. Check us out over there at royalrambleradio.podbean.com. You can download that Podbean app on your phone or wherever and listen to us on the go wherever you are. We are also streaming on twitch.tv. I've been playing a lot of the new Fire Pro Wrestling World. Amazing wrestling game. Way better than WWE 2K. Check it out. We're doing a lot of gameplay over there, trying to get some followers over there and gain some new listeners. So check us out at twitch.tv/Royal Ramble Radio. Now that is all out of the way, guys, we have a huge Raw to talk about tonight. Obviously, there was a lot of anticipation heading into this Raw with two main questions going into this. However, there is something that I wanted to talk about really quick, which was the news that Talking Smack has been canceled. Now, I was going to talk about this tonight on this episode. However, I think I am going to push that onto the SmackDown review that will go up tomorrow. I have a lot to say about that, guys. A lot of mixed feelings about it. I think it's a really stupid decision by WWE to get rid of Talking Smack when it was easily one of the best shows on the network. It did a lot of great things for a lot of their characters. Not really sure why Vince McMahon and, creative decided to get rid of it, but I will talk more in depth about that tomorrow on a review of SmackDown. So if that is something that you're interested in, make sure you tune into that episode tomorrow. But like I said, guys, we have a huge Raw to talk about tonight, and obviously the two main questions heading into tonight is, well, they're obvious. Number one, Kurt Angle. What is going to happen? There was no real spoilers about this reveal. I was expecting there, to be a breaking news or kind of a leak or some sort that let us know exactly what was going to happen on this episode. And that did not happen. We did not get any leaks. So a lot of people still questioning, was it going to be Dixie Carter? Was she going to show up? She just did a recent WWE interview, so kind of showing that she is back into the company somewhat. Is she going to get involved? Is it going to be Stephanie? A lot of people figure that maybe Kurt Angle is having some type of love affair with Stephanie McMahon. Will she get involved, and will this head to a Triple H versus Kurt Angle match at WrestleMania or even SummerSlam? And then finally, a lot of people were saying, could it be Chad Gable? Now, I think this was one that a lot of people were just kind of throwing out there, not really expecting anything to come of it, just kind of, noticing the relationship or the likeness that Chad Gable and Kurt Angle have with one another. Obviously, their amateur wrestling backgrounds, being Olympians, a lot of that, they kind of tie themselves together with those sort of things. So, what is going to happen tonight? That is obviously the main question. And will this angle lead us into a new storyline that we can get attached to and get hyped again? Or has WWE built this thing up to be so big and so hyped up that it's just going to fail miserably and it's going to miss the mark? We will find out. And then obviously the second question as we head in tonight is obviously who is going to win that number one contenders match tonight versus Joe and Roman. My prediction last week was that Braun Strowman will interfere and we will inevitably lead into a four-way at SummerSlam. The interesting thing about going into a four-way at SummerSlam, though, is that Brock does not have to eat the pin to lose the belt. This means they can keep Brock looking strong, they can keep Roman looking strong if that's what they want, and they can still switch the title by keeping those guys elevated. So that is one good thing that will happen if we do in fact get that four-way at SummerSlam. So right off the bat, guys, obviously this card is stacked. It's one of the first times in a very long time that I was legitimately excited to watch Raw. They did a really good job of actually promoting this episode. A lot of the times they spend, the entire episode of Raw or SmackDown promoting their pay-per-view and not necessarily promoting their next episode. However, lately you can tell that there's been sort of a change here. They've actually started to promote the following episode to get us to continually watch this stuff. So I thought they did a good job at promoting this and getting me intrigued. and I'm interested to see, what actually happens tonight. So I felt like this was a must-see episode, but will WWE actually make it must-see? Well, let's find out. So we kick off the show, guys. It's a highlight package basically showing all of the Kurt stuff that has been happening. Showing us everything from how it started, showing videos of him and his children, showing pictures of him and his wrestling days as an amateur wrestler. They're teasing multiple things in this package. Obviously, him coming out and saying that this news could ruin his career. Obviously, there's a lot of different angles at play here, so it is interesting. They're calling his segment that will be coming up later in the show, Kurt Comes Clean. So obviously, a lot of speculation as to what is going to happen here. They hype up the Joe Reigns match for tonight as well, obviously the second biggest thing on this card. And then Dean Ambrose comes out, sucking the entire life out of the room, in my opinion. He comes out holding a chair. Cole says Dean has business on his mind. Apparently, Dean is coming out to talk about The Miz, basically. And yes, are you serious right now? That is all I'm thinking. Are we really going to do this again? No one wants to see Miz versus Dean again. It was the worst match on the card at Great Balls of Fire. Someone needs to throw this match into a fire and burn it to the ground, because we are sick of seeing this. And I don't understand why we are continually getting this feud when we have one of the best rosters in WWE history, yet all we get for the IC title is Miz and Ambrose. It's so tired at this point. We need some fresh feuds, and this is just a bore and a chore, honestly. Dean comes out. He says that his chair, he and his chair are a little bent out of shape because of The Miz. Obviously, this is the chair that he used last week to end the show by beating down The Miz. It's all bent up. He calls the chair Steely Dan. They are in Nashville, of course. Dean then tells Miz to come out, so they finish where they left off last week. He then opens up the chair, sits down on it in the middle of the ring, and just waits for Miz to come out. He's on the mic this whole time. He's telling these horrible fucking jokes, just typical Dean Ambrose shit. He mentions Nashville for another cheap pop, challenged The Miz even more. And it's apparent at this point that The Miz is not going to come out. He's not coming out here to these challenges. And then all of a sudden, Seth Rollins' music hits. And I'm thinking, thank God, maybe we'll get Rollins versus Dean instead. Let's not do another Dean versus Miz match. That's all I could think about at this point. Seth then says Dean came out last week, swinging his chair, fighting Seth's battles. Obviously, last week, Dean told Seth not to fight his battles. Dean says that he goes where his mood takes him, and he happened to be in the mood to swing the chair at Miz and his cronies. Seth says that he isn't out here to pick a fight, but Miz got him involved when they attacked him. But Seth goes on to say that he has a question. When he goes to take out The Miz, will Dean be in his way or be by his side? We get a yes chant here from this Nashville crowd. Obviously, they're excited to possibly see a semi-Shield reunion here with Dean and Seth. Dean then says they aren't brothers. He says his brothers were in the Shield. He said his brothers had his back. His brothers stood for something. Dean brings up Seth hitting him with a chair and turning on him, several years ago. Then Seth yells at Dean saying, "That was 3 years ago. I'm sorry." He says he lives with that decision every single day of his life. He also says he remembers them fighting at Hell in a Cell. He says he remembers when Dean cashed in his Money in the Bank contract on him. Seth then asks Dean what it's going to take for Dean to finally move on. Dean contemplates this for a bit, doesn't say anything, just walks around. Then he says he sees Seth's lips moving, but he doesn't hear anything. These are horrible lines from Dean Ambrose right now. Completely horrible promo, in my opinion. Seth then tells Dean that he should hit him with a chair, essentially. So he turns his back, trying to get Dean to hit him to get some sort of revenge, I guess. Dean is standing behind him with the chair, contemplating yet again. He's just standing behind Seth, waiting, thinking. It looks like he's about to hit him with the chair, but instead, Dean throws the chair to the outside of the ring. The crowd erupts in boos at this point. They start arguing off mic, so we don't really hear what they're saying at this point. And then the Miz's music hits. Miz comes out with Bo and Curtis. He says that this is a touching scene, seeing these two brothers try and work out their betrayal. Miz says Dean will not forgive him. When you burn bridges in this industry, that's a major no-no. Miz then says he has owned Dean for months. Extreme Rules, Miz wins. Great Balls of Fire, Miz wins. And I'm thinking, man, it goes way, way, way before that. You could have brought up multiple pay-per-views and multiple matches, but I'm glad you didn't, because we would have been sitting here for fucking hours. Miz says Dean doesn't have what it takes to do it all on his own and beat him. Bo and Curtis then start heading towards the ring. Dean and Seth left watching them. Miz says Dean just reacts. He has no strategy. He says he may not be an architect, but then Bo and Curtis grab chairs from underneath the ring. Miz also grabs one. It's now 3v2. 3 of them have chairs. Bo, Curtis, and Miz, and Dean and Seth have nothing, and they are standing in the ring all alone. The crowd then starts chanting for Roman, which obviously would make sense, right? I mean, it's 3v2, it's 2 of the Shield brothers. They are left out there, having to defend themselves with, nothing but their fists against chairs. This is not looking good. You would expect Roman Reigns to come out and possibly help them, right? Well, he doesn't. The Miz and the rest, they start beating the shit out of Rollins and Ambrose. Curtis and Bo taking out Rollins while Miz throws Dean into the steel steps. Miz then hits the skull-crushing finale onto Rollins into the steel chair. Then they all leave, no Roman in sight. My thoughts on this opening segment, this was not the greatest way to kick off Raw. Seth and Dean, I don't know what it is, man, but they just do not really have much chemistry between each other. The whole time they were cutting these promos, it just felt awkward and very strange. And then obviously, them teasing the Shield reunion. However, Roman never comes out. It's almost as if he refuses. Roman has a lot more important things going on storyline-wise than whatever Seth and Dean are doing. I mean, seriously, look at what he's doing right now compared to these guys. Do you honestly think Roman Reigns gives a fuck about Dean and Seth getting a beatdown for Miz? No, he's preparing for his battle against Joe tonight. He just fought Braun Strowman in a crazy ambulance match. Do you think he honestly gives a fuck about Seth and Dean? No, he doesn't. And that proves that he doesn't, because he never comes out here to help them. Until we are actually getting an actual reunion, these teases of the Shield reunion are not working for me. And kicking off the show with a feud that's been going on since last year, all it does is remind us how desperate we are for fresh feuds. I don't want to see Miz versus Dean again. I don't think this was a good choice to start off the show like this. If this is leading to another Miz-Dean match, I honestly cannot believe it. However, it kind of looks like Seth is going to get involved in some way too, so it kind of makes me wonder if it's a triple threat at SummerSlam for the IC title. That might make me a tiny bit more interested, but quite honestly, not that much more interested. We're still having to see Dean versus Miz for the IC title in some fashion. It's just very tired at this point, and we need something new to actually elevate that title. Miz has honestly done nothing with it since he got it, and that is a shame. Dean obviously did nothing with it when he had it as well, so I'm not really sure what they're doing, man, but they have got to find a way to freshen that thing up, because it is completely boring, and I felt like this was a bad start to Raw right off the bat. Anyway, we head backstage. Miz, Maurice, and the Miztourage are all with him. Charlie tries to come up to interview them, but they say that they told Seth and Dean all they needed to say. They are obviously in a hurry, which I'm not really sure why, but they immediately leave the stadium. I guess maybe they were afraid of Roman trying to come get them, or maybe Seth and Dean getting revenge, but they just leave the stadium, and we never see them again for the rest of this show. Then we head into the first match of the night, and that is going to be Bayley versus Alexa Bliss. Obviously, Bayley rolled up Alexa last week for a pin, so she was being awarded a 1v1 match tonight. Bayley goes to hug this kid as she's coming down the ramp, who looks like he's been crying. I'm not really sure. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, I'd be crying too if Bayley was my favorite wrestler, because she has done nothing for a very long time. Alexa then comes out. She walks by this crying kid, and she starts to make fun of him, doing crying motions with her hands and being like, oh, boo-boo, Very good stuff. Holy shit, what a heel out of Alexa. Honestly, it kind of sucks for that little kid. I kind of feel bad for him, but at the same time, Alexa is just so smart and just so fucking good with her facial expressions and the things that she does. That's what makes her so much better than everyone else in this women's division. Anyway, the match starts. Alexa starts by slapping the fuck out of Bayley. Just a huge slap here. Bayley then drives her into the corner for some knees, but Bliss is able to reverse it for some knees of her own. Bayley comes out pretty aggressive here. She is pretty much on fire to start up this match, but then all of a sudden, Nia Jax's music hits. Nia Jax has new Titantron graphics. It's a yellow and black theme. I actually like this a lot better than her old stuff. Still the same shitty song, but new Titantron graphics. They immediately go to commercial as Nia is heading down the ramp, though. Nia is cheering Alexa on when we come back. You know, they still have that friendship that they've been trying to portray. Bliss is working over the arm of Bayley. She puts Bayley on the mat and starts surfboarding her while holding on to the ropes. Bayley finally gets in control. She has a nice DDT off the ropes, then some rapid fire punches. We actually get a Bayley chant for a few seconds, which is completely unexpected, honestly. Bayley hits a flying elbow off the middle rope, then a side suplex, then hits an elbow off the top rope. She then goes for a pin, but Alexa rolls to the outside before she's able to capitalize on it. Bayley chases her, but Nia meets her on the outside. Alexa takes advantage of this distraction and takes Bayley out. Then Sasha appears out of nowhere. She jumps onto Nia, she attacks her, throws her into the post. There's a huge drop kick onto Nia. Then Bayley goes for a roll-up. 1, 2, but Alexa is able to kick out. Then Bayley just hits the Bayley to belly. 1, 2, 3. Bayley wins again. And we're left with Sasha and Bayley celebrating in the ring. So, my thoughts on this match. It was a decent match. I kind of like the ending. You know, I thought that she was going to win on the roll-up, but she didn't. And then she just immediately hit the suplex and won. So, I thought that was kind of a cool ending. The narrative here, though, is obviously that Bayley cannot win without Sasha. Obviously, last week she won as a tag team with Sasha, and now Sasha coming out to help her for the distraction finish. Obviously, they're pushing that whole narrative again that Bayley cannot win without her. This was one of the things that they were pushing originally when we were heading towards that Bayley-Sasha match a long time ago before they decided to stop it. So it is interesting that they are going back to this, and I think by them teasing this again, it kind of shows that we may be in fact headed for a Sasha versus Bayley match soon. This obviously plants the seeds for a future turn for sure. I think it will probably be Sasha turning on Bayley at some point. Like I said, this match itself was okay. Alexa and Bayley are obviously great in the ring despite Bayley's recent flaws, but I don't think that this was anything that we actually needed to see. It was a missable match in the end. All it really did was just build up for more Sasha versus Alexa, and of course, Bayley versus Sasha down the line. They show the commentary table. Corey gets another text. He gets up and leaves. Then they show this very long ESPYs highlight package, basically doing their own Warrior Award on the ESPYs, showing off, it just shows off all the awards that the WWE got, including all their Make-A-Wish stuff. So this was very long, and obviously them showing all their good deeds. So far, this was a Raw that had a lot going for it, but a whole lot of nothing has happened so far. And this was the feeling that I was getting throughout this episode. All I was doing was waiting for the Kurt and Joe and Roman thing, and we were basically having to be, we're going to have to patiently wait for that stuff because they are holding it off till the very end. So this did kind of suck the life out of Raw for me, having to wait for this. I don't know if I'm just being impatient or what, but I kind of feel like they booked this incorrectly. I really wish we would have had Kurt's announcement either at the top or maybe Roman versus Joe somewhere in the middle, because this episode of Raw started to lose its luster as we had to go through segment after segment that were really just pointless, but we'll get that. We'll get there. Backstage, we had Curtis saying that he is having second thoughts. Corey is with him. He says maybe this is something that he should keep to himself, but he says that this may be something that should not be televised. Corey says he understands, but this is going to get out. So he needs to go out there and tell the truth. Corey says he has nothing to be ashamed of. Kurt goes on to agree. He says that this is something everyone should hear from him. He says that Corey's friendship is something that means a lot to both of us. So I still have no idea what he's going to announce at this point. I still don't understand how, Dixie Carter coming back would end his career. Yeah, she's fucking horrible, but that's not necessarily something he would get in trouble for. So at this point, it's either Stephanie or something completely ridiculous that ends up being comedy, and I really hope it's not the latter. It ends up not being that, so that is good, and it does not end up being Stephanie. So anyway, we have Titus backstage. He's coaching up Akira and Apollo Crews. He tells Tozawa that, you pinned Neville last week, then on 205 Live, he folded you up like some origami. Then Arya Daivari enters. He cuts a promo on Akira. Then he challenges him, saying meet him in the ring so that he can finish what he started. I do like that they're trying to put some more time into the cruiserweights here. Actually trying to build up a storyline on Raw. However, it's just not catching with me, man. The Cruiserweight Classic, the tournament that they did, was just so much better than this. The cruiserweights on Raw are just completely different from what they are or what they were in that tournament, and I really wish that the WWE could find a way to go back to that, the way that they were in the tournament rather than what they're doing now. This stuff just is not working for me, and these storylines are all very boring. Next up, we have a cruiserweight tag match. I'm not going to go into this. This was fucking horrible. Ali wins with an inverted 450 splash. It was very nice. I'd love to see more of Mustafa Ali, but whatever. Ali and Gallagher win over Kendrick and Gulak. Next up, Enzo Amore comes out. Big reaction from Enzo here. He does a really great job of waking up the crowd, which is honestly something that I felt like this crowd needed at this point. He goes on to recite Newton's third law, but then he says there isn't a man who can elicit a reaction on the microphone like Enzo Amore. He says he does it knowing the repercussions of his actions. He says it, he owns it. Honestly, I was starting to wonder if this was some sort of stab at the recent backstage rumors that's been going on with Enzo. Apparently, he's been forced out of the locker room, not allowed to change in the locker room with others, and I'm not really sure what's going on with all of that. I'm not sure if it's true or what, but there are some backstage rumors that Enzo is not necessarily getting along with the rest of the locker room currently. He comes out, he says you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but you always got to fight for what you believe in. He says that he feels Cass did believe in what they were fighting for when they were a tag team, but being 7 foot tall didn't win them any championships. He mentions when Cass threw him out of the ring like a piece of trash at Great Balls of Fire, but saying when you knocked Enzo down 9 times, he gets up 10. They show highlights from last week when Big Show took out Cass. He then says that even though he was in the ring with someone his size, he still couldn't look him in the eyes. He then finishes his promo. He goes into the whole SAWFT thing, which I guess that is now his saying now that Big Cass is not a part of their tag team anymore. But as he's doing the chant, Big Cass's music hits before he can finish. Cass walks over to the commentary table. He calls out Corey, saying if this weren't for him, none of this would have happened, which I think is interesting that they're still kind of putting Corey into more positions on this show. I'm not really sure what they're leaning towards as far as that goes, but it is interesting that Corey Graves is still getting parts in the episode and with new storylines other than the Kurt Angle situation. So we will see where that goes. The crowd starts chanting asshole or casshole, not really sure. Cass says Enzo didn't learn his lesson at Great Balls of Fire, so he's coming to the ring to beat some sense into him. And hopefully after that, he will finally shut his mouth. Cass gets into the ring, but Enzo immediately rolls out. Enzo goes on to say, you want to fight? Then he hops over the railing, he grabs a chair, he finds some random kid in the audience and has him sit in his lap. Then he goes on to say, when Cass is lying out cold on his back, Enzo will ask him how he's doing. Then the Big Show's music hits. My thoughts on the Enzo promo, it was all over the place, man. It was really long, and he basically just said the same old shit that he's been saying for the past 3 weeks. It wasn't a horrible promo, and this wasn't a terrible segment necessarily, but I just kind of felt like we've already seen this already. And the fact that this only leads to a Big Show versus Cass match is kind of, it's going to be a letdown. Let's be real, guys. No one really wants to see Big Show versus Cass. That isn't a match anyone is looking forward to. Anyway, Big Show gets to the ring. Cass knocks him off the apron as soon as he tries to enter. Big Show then drives Cass into the barricade. Cass hits Big Show, but he's like no-selling it, basically no-selling these punches. Cass eventually starts beating down Big Show into the barricade, just tons of clubbing blows to Big Show. Show has a nice scoop slam onto the outside of the ring. He then throws Cass into the ring, then chops him as he lays on the apron. This was a very loud chop. This sounded like it hurt like hell. Cass then drives Big Show into the post on the apron. Cass eventually gets Big Show into the middle of the ring and just MMA mounts him and starts punching him in the face. We get loud Cass hold chants here. Big Show is bleeding from his nose at this point. Meanwhile, Cass continues to kick him in the chest as he's bleeding everywhere. Enzo then runs into the ring out of nowhere, but Cass just turns around, hits him with a big boot right away, and Enzo is practically dead. Cass then leaves as Big Show and Enzo are sprawled out on the mat. My thoughts here, the beatdown was okay. The crowd was kind of dead for this beatdown, honestly. It was kind of just a bunch of clubbing blows and a bunch of kicks. Nothing really too vicious, but it was definitely way better than that sorry-ass Goldust R-Truth beatdown that we got a few weeks ago. Overall, they're just trying to promote the Cass Big Show match, and I'm guessing that probably Enzo will be in the Big Show's corner for that match as well. I don't know if this is what we're getting at SummerSlam or if this is something that they will, finish up on Raw. I honestly, though, I don't see the Big Show winning this. Big Show's career is heading towards the end. I think his contract is ending pretty soon, so Big Show is in a position in his career where he's here to put guys over, and I think he will do a good job of putting Cass over. Overall, though, my feelings on this whole thing is that I'm actually starting to get a little sick of this Enzo and Cass angle already, and I think that is a bad sign. This was easily the worst segment that we've gotten out of this whole situation so far. Enzo's promo was all over the place. It really wasn't his best work. I thought his last two promos that he did, the one on Great Balls of Fire and the one before that, were some of the best that he's ever done. And this one just kind of fell flat for me and kind of fell all over the place. So I'm really hoping that we can finally end this shit and we don't have to constantly see Enzo and Cass constantly bickering at each other forever. And they can finally find a new position for Enzo to go into, as now he is obviously a single star. Next up, we have Roman backstage. He's interviewed by Charlie. She reminds him that Joe has beat him twice. She goes on to say that the stakes tonight are higher than ever. Roman goes on to say, though, that he is at his best when the stakes are at their highest. Look at The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Obviously, everyone boos at that. He then says he will take on Brock at SummerSlam, and he will become the next Universal Champ, going on to say that this is his yard. This was just a typical Roman promo. It's my yard. I'm the guy. I'm the big dog. Yada yada. Let's just get to the damn match already. Anyway, we go backstage. Dean and Seth are nursing their injuries from the top of the show. And honestly, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, was that beatdown really that bad? You guys have been out of it for nearly an hour and a half. The beatdown really wasn't even that hardcore. They got hit with a couple of chair shots and that was it. Anyway, these two are arguing about who's helping who, blah, blah, blah. I really do not give a shit about either of these people right now. Kurt then finally enters. He goes on to say what happened earlier. After what happened earlier, he knows that they want their revenge. So he goes on to set up a Dean versus Seth versus any two of the Miz Taraj that he wants. But then Dean, in all of his brilliance, goes on to say, well, why not all three? So instead, they're doing a Miz and Miz Taraj match versus Seth and Dean next week. So it'll be a handicap match, 3 versus 2. Great. Really stupid out of Dean Ambrose here. I don't understand why you would want to put yourself at a disadvantage. That doesn't make any sense. But, of course, he's wacky Dean Ambrose. He's got to do something wacky. So, whatever. Anyway, we head into our third match of the night, and it's going to be Elias Samson versus Finn Balor. Immediately, I'm thinking, oh my god, man, this Raw is sucking the life out of me. This feels like the longest episode ever, and we are only halfway through at this point. I don't understand why Balor is getting this match again when we just had the blow-off match last week. He beat Samson clean. There's no need for a rematch. Why are we seeing this again? And why are they keeping Balor in that below mid-card area for another week? We've got to get Balor into something meaningful. Otherwise, he is going to become a mid-carder, and he should not, man. He was your first ever Universal Champion. He is one of the best people in the company. The WWE has to treat him as such. Anyway, before Elias can come out and sing his song, we have a very loud "We Want Balor" chants. Elias is refusing to play until they are quiet, and then Balor eventually erupts. Cole says, "It's the first ever Universal Champion." Yeah, Cole, it's also the first Universal Champion to not get his rematch. Where the fuck has he gone since that? Nowhere but down, and that is all on creative. That is all on the booking. We've got to get Balor in something meaningful ASAP. Enough of this shit with Elias Sampson. Anyway, the match starts, and Cole tells this crazy story about Elias. I guess they're trying to give him some sort of backstory and give him some sort of character, but he tells this crazy story about how Elias used to sit outside of NXT shows playing his guitar as people came into the arena until the cops were called, and he went to jail for soliciting, I guess is what they said. And it wasn't until Dusty Rhodes heard about it and came and bailed him out. And all I'm thinking is, come on, man. You're making up stories about Dusty after he's gone. That is a little fucked up. I don't really like that at all. Let's leave Dusty Rhodes out of this, man. Come on. Anyway, Samson has a nice scoop slam onto Balor, tosses him into the ropes. Elias then bashes Balor's face into the apron. Elias is in control for a majority of the match until Balor finally hits the reverse Pele kick. Balor then goes off. He has a nice series of offense here, culminating in a drop kick. Balor goes for the up and over on Elias, but Elias catches him on his shoulders. Elias then hits Balor with a huge powerbomb, goes for the pin. 1, 2, Balor barely kicks out. That was a very close near fall, and all I'm thinking is, if Balor loses this match, holy shit, what the fuck is happening? Anyway, Elias has a backbreaker for another near fall. He then heads to the top rope, but Balor hits him with an enziguri. Then Balor hits a drop kick through the middle ropes, then hits that running punt on the apron that he always does. Balor hits a drop kick onto the outside, sending Elias into the barricade. But then Elias grabs his guitar out of nowhere. Balor comes running at him full fucking speed, and Elias just decimates Balor by hitting him with the guitar. This guitar just explodes into a pile of dust. Holy shit. Balor immediately hits the ground. He has a huge gash on his head. Someone in the crowd, some like country sounding dude in the crowd says, "You got him the hard way, asshole." I thought that was hilarious. Whoever that was in the crowd, props to you, man, because he did hit him hard way, man. This was not a worked guitar. This was a legitimate guitar here. He hit him with a real guitar in the head. Normally you would think, okay, this will be a guitar that, is made to be exploded and made to, hit someone with, kind of like those bottles that are actually just made of like sugar cane that you bash someone over the head with. This was a real guitar, though, and you can tell because the gash on Balor's head is so big, man, and he is completely out of it. That guitar bash, though, it was just so fucking vicious. It wasn't a gimmicked guitar. Like I said, that was a real guitar going straight into the head of Balor at full force. Holy shit. I honestly think that Elias was supposed to hit him in the shoulder, but I think he might have missed here and actually got Balor's head. Anyway, as Balor is walking out, groggy as fuck, Bray Wyatt comes onto the screen and is laughing at Finn Balor. He's saying, "I bet you didn't expect that, Finn." He says that real people have feelings. He says that he lives for the look of pain and suffering that Balor has on his face now. He feels the need to satisfy his soul. He says that he feels the need to punish Balor. Bray says that he is not a myth, he's real, he's the eye of the storm, yada fucking yada, same old shit. This segment was honestly, it was about to put me to sleep until Balor got smashed with that guitar. That was seriously so fucking brutal. He definitely legitimately got cut here. He's gonna need stitches after that, without a doubt. And I honestly cannot believe that they continued with this segment after seeing the cut on Balor's head, but they did. I do think Bray versus Balor is something that I'm more interested in than, Balor versus Elias or whatever else they were going with. This is something that they teased months ago and then they backed out of it. So it does look like Elias versus Balor may officially be done now, but actually no, it's not, because they end up teasing another match for next week, a no DQ match. So I guess it's not over, but it does look like we are inevitably and eventually going to head into Bray versus Balor. I'm guessing that's probably our SummerSlam match. That could be a good one. I think that is outside of that mid-card area, even though it's not for a title. However, I don't think this is going to be a good match for Bray Wyatt, considering he's someone that needs wins, and I don't think they are going to let him beat Finn Balor. And if he does beat Finn Balor, that's going to hurt Balor a lot more than it's going to help Bray Wyatt at this point. Kurt Angle is shown backstage again. He's saying he's getting anxious, but he is ready. Bayley and then Sasha enter. They need help with some sort of disagreement. Sasha says that Bayley thinks she deserves a shot at Alexa at SummerSlam, but anyone who watched Great Balls of Fire knows that Sasha deserves it. Bayley says that Sasha didn't pin her, though. Kurt eventually says that they're both deserving, but he isn't going to decide. They are. So next week, we will have a number 1 contenders match between Sasha and Bayley. My immediate thoughts is I am completely down for this. I honestly can't believe that we're going to get this match on Raw and this early, but it makes sense. Both ladies have a right to fight Alexa, and the only way to settle that is a number 1 contenders match. So that is actual logical booking from WWE. That is not something that we often see, but this is actually logical, and it makes sense. Even though this match could easily headline a pay-per-view, and I still think that it will down the line, at this point, I do think that Sasha is going to win this match, but who knows, man. Crazier things have happened, but I would like to see Sasha beat her and then go on to get the title at SummerSlam. And then we can go into Bayley versus Sasha with Sasha turning heel and all of that stuff. I think that is exactly where we are headed. Anyway, they show highlights of the Hardys match versus Gallows and Anderson, along with the beatdown from the Revival last week. They have an interview with Dash and Dawson. They say they attack the Hardys because they're the Hardys. Then they say they don't care about them, but they guarantee that tonight they'll care about the Revival. I thought this was a great promo out of Dash and Dawson. I think they need to get these guys on the mic more often because it's a fresh team and they're some of the best on the mic and in the ring. So please, can we please have more of the Revival? Please. We have another Cruiserweight match. This is the Akira Tozawa versus Arya Daivari one. I'm not going to go into this garbage either. It's Cruiserweight bullshit. But the one thing to keep in mind here, is that they did not do the purple ropes tonight. I didn't even notice this until it was pointed out to me online when I read it, but they did not do the purple ropes, and still nobody gave a fuck about these matches. So it looks like I was wrong. It's not the purple ropes that take people out of it. It's these horrible storylines and these matches that we constantly get out of the cruiserweights. The one thing I like about Mustafa Ali is that he comes out and actually plays into the role of a real cruiserweight. He goes out there, he does high-flying maneuvers, he tries to get the crowd excited with crazy stunts and crazy spots, but the rest of the roster doesn't do any of that stuff. It seems like they go out there, they wrestle that same WWE safe style, and that's all that we get. And on top of that, there's no intriguing storylines within this division. So I think that is what's really sucking the life out of this thing. And look, if they canceled Talking Smack because ratings, I would be deathly afraid if I'm on 205 Live, because the axe of Vince McMahon is probably coming, and it's going to chop down 205 Live sooner rather than later. Anyway, this match ends with Titus essentially telling the ref that he wants Tozawa to quit the match, basically calling it off because he's afraid that Arya Daivari is going to break the arm of Tozawa. So he goes up to the ref, calls off the match. He basically wants to protect his client. And Akira leaves the ring yelling at Titus, telling him that he didn't quit, you don't care about me. So kind of teasing a breakup of Tozawa and Titus. Am I supposed to care? I don't. Anyway, we finally, after all of this bullshit, we finally get a segment that we want, and it's the Kurt Angle announcement. Fucking finally, man. This show was dragging so bad at this point, and I needed something to lift my spirits. Is the WWE going to wake me up here, or are they going to hit the snooze button? Let's find out. So Angle comes to the ring. He says that he's nervous. He says that he has to apologize for the WWE universe. Not sure why he can't say WWE, but every time he does, he says WWE. He says as a child, he was taught that every action has a consequence. He gets major what chants here out of this Nashville crowd, which, fuck that. Why did you guys do that? That is so stupid. I hate the what chants. if you ever go to a WWE show, please don't ever participate in these because it's for fucking morons. Anyway, he says that he recently found out that an action in his past has serious consequence, but because it changed his life. He says that he was afraid of change because he thought it would hurt his family, but he says his family is 100% supportive. He also says the WWE is 100% supportive. He goes on to say that while he was in college, he dated a young lady, and it wasn't until recently that he found out that she gave birth to a baby boy. He says that this baby boy was put up for adoption. He was adopted and taught great American values. He goes on to talk about his son, talking about the accolades of him in college and high school, saying that he gave up everything to chase his dream to become a WWE superstar. Kurt then says, I want to introduce you to the newest member of Raw, my son, Jason Jordan. And immediately I'm thinking, holy shit, what is happening? Kurt is crying in the ring, just completely bawling at this point. All I'm thinking is, holy shit, the Chad Gable, Jason Jordan singles push is real. It's happening. American Alpha is no more. Like I said, Kurt is just bawling in the ring. The Academy Award at this point is going to Kurt Angle for this. This whole thing was pretty weird, but also kind of awesome at the same point. Jason gets into the ring. They have this long hug. Corey then says on commentary that he and Jason were great friends in NXT, and Jason had been confiding in him, and he wanted Corey to help him bring them together. And we end the segment with them hugging. Now, I do have some thoughts about this, guys. Number one, I do like this. I think it's interesting, and I think Jason Jordan is going to get a massive singles push here. I do think, though, that this segment, for how much it was built up, it wasn't long enough. And I think that is the whole problem with this thing. You know, we waited all night for this segment. We waited for months, you know, of them building up this whole secret for it to end in a 5-minute segment where Jason Jordan didn't even talk on the mic. It was all Kurt Angle. They hugged, and it ended. Now, I definitely did not see that coming. I didn't see anyone predicting Jason Jordan being the reveal. A lot of people were, you know, saying that Gable was going to be the announcement, but, you know, no one actually mentioned Jason Jordan, which honestly, it also makes sense for it to be Jason as well. I do think that they kind of look alike. I think that Jason Jordan can really become, you know, a superstar essentially now that he is announced as Kurt Angle's son. But honestly, it just feels a little bit weird. They ended up doing this interview after Raw where it was Jason Jordan and Kurt together being interviewed by Renee. It was only about 10 minutes long. They both got to talk a little bit about it, you know. And even though, I mean, obviously, guys, WWE is a scripted, you know, fake thing. But at the same time, sometimes it's really hard to, you know, picture these sorts of family angles when you know in your heart of hearts and you know in your mind that this just isn't true. So it's kind of hard to suspend your disbelief or suspend your belief for this whole angle here. But in the end, guys, it did kind of work for me. I'm interested to see where this goes, and I think that is what's more important here. I think it builds up to future Raws, and obviously Jason Jordan is going to get a huge push here, and I could honestly see them pushing this whole conflict of interest as a feud coming up. You know, Kurt having his son there. I bet Jason Jordan is going to start getting more matches. The rest of the roster is going to say that he's getting, you know, is getting special treatment because he is Kurt Angle's son. So maybe that is how Stephanie comes back into the fold and comes in and tries to break all this stuff up. But who knows, man? That segment was crazy. And I have to say that I think it delivered simply based on the fact that it surprised everyone. You know, out of all of the guesses I heard, like I said, none of them were Jason Jordan. Everyone was saying Dixie Carter, Stephanie, Chad Gable. You know, people were close by guessing Chad Gable, but if you looked at it, Jason Jordan made more sense, and no one even guessed it. Not that I saw. So I do think this was an interesting angle. It's going to be interesting to see how they push Jason Jordan from here on out. Or should I say Jason Angle? Are they going to change his name? Who knows? I still think it's up in the air as to what's in store for both of them, but this is a nice surprise, and like I said, I'm totally interested in seeing what goes on from here. But yeah, very shocking reveal and very interesting, man. Very interesting. Anyway, we head into the fourth match of the night. It's the Hardys versus the Revival. As the Revival comes into the ring, Hardys immediately attack them, getting a little revenge for last week's beatdown. We get Loud Brother Nero chants to start this off. Jeff has a nice clothesline onto Scott. He then tags in Matt, and they go at it for a while. Dash finally gets a tag in, and they both beat down Matt in their corner. Matt then gets in control. He does his usual apron spot where he bashes their head into each of the aprons. They have a very nice tag team move where they pick up Dash by his feet and flip him all the way over. Very innovative stuff out of the Hardys here. Eventually, Dash and Dawson finally get back in control. They are completely dominating Matt Hardy at this point, using a bunch of various submission holds on the rope, really targeting the leg of Matt. Matt is obviously selling the leg. He can't get to Jeff for the tag because he's in so much pain. Matt finally kicks Scott out and then gets the tag to Jeff. Jeff hits the inverted atomic drop onto Dash, then a drop kick for a near fall. Jeff gets to the top rope, hits a splash, 1, 2, Dash kicks out. Jeff then hits the twist of fate, but Dash dives in and breaks up the ensuing pin. Then the Revival are really showing just how great of a tag team they are here. I mean, they're one of the few teams out there that are really reinvigorating the life of the tag team division, so I'm really hoping we can see more out of this feud in particular. Anyway, the Hardys go on to hit Whisper in the Wind. Jeff heads to the top rope, but Dash hits the ropes, knocking Jeff off. Scott then rolls up Jeff, grabs the tights, 1, 2, 3, pins Jeff. The pin was pretty sketchy here. It's almost like the ref wasn't sure what to do. It's almost like on that third count, he didn't tap the mat, but I think this was the planned ending here. I thought it was a great match in the end, though. I would love to see a few more from these guys, especially on a pay-per-view. I think that would be a great match for a pay-per-view. And the Revival are just showing how great of a tag team they are, both in the ring and on the mic, even though it was somewhat limited tonight. I hope that we do see more of them in the future, and like I said, I would like to see more Revival versus Hardy matches. So, as long as it's not Hardys versus Cesaro and Sheamus for the millionth time, fuck man, I am happy. Anyway, we have a Joe interview backstage. He says that he came within inches of beating Brock at Great Balls of Fire. He says that Roman, though, his perspective is skewed, saying that Roman looks at Joe like an obstacle, but Joe says that he is more than an obstacle. He says that the first 2 times they met, he left Roman laying out cold, and he will make sure that the third time is a charm. Really great promo from Joe. It was pretty short, but in the end, man, Joe is just so fucking good on the mic. Anytime he talks, I listen, and I really wish that they would give him a mic more often because he is one of the few bright spots on Raw, and when he does show up on screen, it immediately gets my attention and makes things more interesting. We have a backstage segment with Akira and Titus. Obviously, Akira is mad about Titus quitting for him. Titus says that he had to stop him because Daivari was going to do permanent damage to his shoulder. Titus says that he wasn't thinking about tonight, he was thinking about next week. He was thinking about next year, and that's why he stopped the match. Akira then demands a match with Daivari on 205 Live, and nobody cares. They promote a no DQ match against Balor versus Elias. This is what I referenced earlier. This fucking goddamn thing is not over yet. Balor does need to get his revenge after that guitar bash, I guess, and that was still one of the coolest moments on this Raw. And Balor is obviously hurting after that, man. You should see the gash on his head. It was fucking bad, but I'm hoping this is finally the blow-off match and we can stop with the Balor versus Elias stuff. I do expect there to be a Bray Wyatt interference in this match because they are obviously heading towards a Balor versus Wyatt match at SummerSlam. And then, against all odds, guys, we finally make it to the main event. This Raw, honestly, it was completely boring for the first 2 hours. Everything since the Kurt segment, though, it has been great. The Kurt segment was really good. The guitar bashing on Balor was also pretty awesome. And then the Hardys and Revival match was also really good. So, in the end, it just leaves me feeling like this show does not need to be 3 fucking hours long. 2 hours at best. And this would actually be a legitimately great show. Anyway, the match starts. Obviously, the winner's going to face Brock. Is there going to be a Braun interference here? Will Roman finally beat Joe? Let's find out. They start in a headlock as this crowd starts heating up. They have some shoulder tackles, and they basically no-sell them until Roman finally gets one of his own, and Joe goes flying. We come back from break. Joe hits an enziguri onto Roman in the corner. Joe has this very long hold where he's twisting the neck of Reigns. This goes on for a very long time here. The crowd starts to get restless. Roman gets back on his feet, but Joe retains control and gets a suplex for a near fall, and then goes right back into that twisting neck hold. Very slow start to this match, and these rest holds are not helping. Roman finally gets to his feet, hits Joe with a flying clothesline for a near fall. Roman then starts hulking up in the corner, but Joe rolls out. Roman chases him down, but Joe meets him with a huge clothesline to the outside. Then Roman hits a clothesline onto Joe himself. We then head to another commercial break. We come back. Joe and Roman are exchanging headbutts in the ring. Joe catches Roman for a Samoan drop, but Roman reverses it into a Samoan drop of his own. Joe then hits a running senton for a near fall, and I'm not sure when it was, but they show a replay, and Joe ate a huge fucking boot to the face from Roman. They show the slow-mo replay, and Joe just completely gets kicked square in the nose. This looked ugly, man. Not sure when it happened. It might have been during the break, but then Roman hits the Superman punch out of nowhere. 1, 2, Joe kicks out. We get a loud Joe chant here. Then, as both men are on the ring, light out, Braun Strowman's music hits, which we all saw this coming. Strowman walks to the ring, throws Joe aside, then turns his sights onto Roman Reigns. Braun has some unfinished business with Roman, obviously, ever since the ambulance match. Roman, though, meets him with a strike as he's entering the ring. Then Braun throws Roman into the barricade, then tosses him back into the ring through the top and middle posts. Ropes, I should say. Joe finally gets up. He starts staring down Braun. Then they start brawling. Braun hits him with a clothesline. He heads back in the ring, tosses Roman aside, then clotheslines him into the corner. Braun is basically taking it to both Joe and Roman now. Joe then gets the coquina clutch onto Braun while he's sitting on the top post. Roman then comes from out of nowhere, hits the Superman punch, knocking both men to their feet. We start getting "This is awesome" chants, which is debatable. Roman goes for another Superman punch, but Braun hits the spine buster. Then he hits his finisher onto Roman, and then he starts to leave the ring. But he decides he isn't done yet. He comes back, targets Reigns again. Security starts coming out, but Braun is able to scare them all away. Braun hits the running power slam again onto Reigns. Then Strowman leaves, and we go off the air with Joe and Roman Reigns both laid out in the ring. Thoughts? So, I guess this match technically never ended, did it? Because I don't remember them ever ringing the bell. The ref just disappeared out of nowhere. I don't know if I missed it or what, but the bell never rang. Overall, though, I did think this match was okay. It was decent. I think Joe and Reigns have had better matches, though, and they can both obviously go at it. That's definitely a pay-per-view caliber match that we just got on Raw. However, I think that they have done better in the past. Neither one won or lost, so obviously Joe still has Roman Reigns' number at this point. I would have really liked the booking if they would have made it look as though Joe was nearly about to beat Roman, but then Braun comes out and separates it, but it really didn't play out that way. It was honestly just two guys going hard as shit in the ring, both eventually fading to exhaustion, then Braun coming out and just beating the fuck out of both of them. I think this is quite obvious where we go, though. We all know Braun was going to get involved here. He did, and we're going to head into a four-way at SummerSlam. There's no official announcement yet, but obviously all three guys have a right to that title, and a four-way makes things way more interesting as far as the belt possibly switching hands goes. Like I said at the top of the show, Brock or Roman wouldn't have to eat the pin, which is two guys that they obviously want to keep strong at all costs. So Joe could pin Strowman, Strowman could pin Joe, and we could have someone get the belt and we could get it back on TV and away from Brock Lesnar, where he doesn't do shit for half of the year and hides away at his house in Minnesota. So either way, I think the four-way is going to be great, and it's something that I'm legit looking forward to, mainly because of the possibilities of the title switch happening. My overall thoughts on this show, though, this was a highly anticipated episode for me, and I'm sure it was highly anticipated for many others as well. This show is probably going to be viewed by people two ways. You're either going to love the Kurt reveal and probably love this episode of Raw, or you're going to hate that reveal. You couldn't care less about Jason Jordan, and you're now questioning why this was the reveal and why they built it up so much in the first place. If you're part of that latter camp, you're probably going to think this show sucked. For me personally, I do think that this show dragged very hard in the first 2 hours. There was basically nothing of note until that Balor-Elias match, and we actually got some answers as to where Balor might be headed for SummerSlam with the whole Bray Wyatt thing. And the guitar bashing, that was obviously pretty fucking cool too. Ever since then, though, or everything before that was pretty much filler and very boring. It felt like it just dragged for me, man. It was just, it just didn't do anything for me, and I felt like we had to wait and wait and wait for the stuff that we wanted to see, and I started to become impatient after having to sit through all of that horrible shit, including that god-awful opening segment. I honestly think if they would have put the Kurt reveal more towards the top of the show, it would have made things a little bit more interesting, and it wouldn't have made it feel as though this show was dragging so much. Having said that, though, I don't think this was necessarily a bad or horrible episode of Raw. I just think that it was loaded towards the back end, and the last hour was really good. The first 2 hours were pretty bad. Like I said, the opening left me scratching my head. I didn't like Dean's promo. I don't want another Miz versus Dean match, and it looks like we are going to head there, or some variation of Dean and Seth versus the Miztourage. And they keep teasing the stupid Shield reunion when we all know Roman isn't going to show up, so why the fuck are we bothering with that? I have no idea. The Hardys and Revival, I really loved their match tonight. I would honestly love to see more of that going forward, and I think we probably will, considering how the Revival won by, holding the tights and getting the pin. I do think the Revival need to be on the mic and on TV more, and they proved why tonight. They can single-handedly make tag matches fun again, and the tag division on both Raw and SmackDown are severely lacking at this point. We need someone to come in and re-energize these divisions. The Kurt Angle reveal, I thought that was fucking crazy. I didn't expect it to be Jason Jordan at all. I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be Dixie, and I kind of felt like Stephanie, wasn't going to do a love angle at this point in her life. It just amazes me that everyone's off-the-wall guess about Chad Gable was almost right. We just end up having the wrong tag partner. Regardless of what you feel about this, I do think that this is going to be an interesting story going forward. I just hope that Jordan doesn't just disappear again and remain off TV. This does seem like they are going to be doing a huge push for him, and I honestly think that he does need it at this point. American Alpha is no more as a tag team. That is a shame because I think those two guys are amazing as a tag team, but at the same time, I think they can also be huge single stars if they push them right, and only time will tell. That main event, as predictable as it was still an entertaining match, even though I don't think it was Joe and Roman's best. It capped off a great final hour of Raw, though. Joe versus Roman is a pay-per-view headlining sort of match, so I do love that we got to see that. And Braun getting involved, we all saw that coming, obviously, but this does lead to the four-way at SummerSlam, and I do think that that's way more intriguing than, Joe versus Brock or Roman versus Brock. It makes the winner, the possibilities of a new champion almost endless here. I'm very interested to see what they do. I honestly hope that we do get a title change. Brock isn't on TV enough, and honestly, the Universal title is a foregone thought at this point. Having it on Brock really doesn't legitimize it as much as the WWE thinks that it does. I would much prefer seeing a fighting champion each week and have the belt on TV rather than some guy who just hides away for half the year. Overall, though, guys, I think this was a decent episode, but there wasn't enough substance in those first 2 hours to warrant this show being so long. I honestly think that Raw would flourish in a 2-hour format. We get rid of the cruiserweights, get rid of the bullshit segments with Titus and Akira Tozawa, get rid of all that filler bullshit, and give us a solid 2 hours like SmackDown does, and Raw would be way better in the end. Raw has been good the past 2 to 3 weeks, don't get me wrong. I do like the pace that they're going, and I like how they're continually promoting the next episode rather than just promoting for the pay-per-view. But the fact still remains, man. This show is way too long in its current format, and it really starts to wear fans down when nothing is happening in those first 2 hours like tonight. So guys, that was our review of Raw. Lots of stuff happened. Let me know what you thought about the reveal of Jason Jordan tonight. What did you think about the match of Roman and Braun? Leave it in the comments below. As always, guys, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's where you're going to find the highest quality episodes of the Royal Ramble podcast that we have to offer. Has our entire backlog, has everything that you need there. So definitely hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment below. Like I said at the top of the show, we're also streaming on twitch.tv now. If you're interested in seeing some video game action with some commentary and that sort of stuff, check us out at twitch.tv/Royal Ramble Radio. And of course, we're on Twitter. Check us out there at Ramble_cast, nearing the 500 follower mark, which is blowing my mind. Thank you to everyone who's following us over there and keeping the conversation going on Twitter. Anyway, guys, that was our episode and our review of Raw. I am your host, Zach Stevens, and I am out. Peace.